This time, we're going to begin the funeral services here in our chapel. As we begin the service, I would ask if any of you might have a cell phone or any other noise-making device, please turn them off at this time. Officiating the service here today is Gary Alterson. Thank you.
A young mother set her foot on the path of life. "Is the way long?" she asked. And her guide said, "Yes, and the way is hard. And you'll be old before you reach the end of it, but the end will be better than the beginning." But the young mother was happy, and she wouldn't believe that anything could be better than these years. So she played with her children and gathered flowers for them along the way, and bathed them in streams. And the sun shone upon them. Life was good, and the young mother thought, nothing will be lovelier than this. The night came, and with it a storm, and the path was dark, and the children shuddered with fear and cold. The mother drew them in close and protected them. And the children said, "Mother, we are not afraid, for you are near, and no harm can come." And the mother said, "This is better than the brightest of days, for I have taught my children courage." And the morning came, and there was a hill ahead, and the children climbed and grew weary, and the mother was weary. But at all times, through her tiredness, she said to her children, "Have a little patience. We're almost there." So the children climbed, and when they reached the top, they said, "We could not have done it without you." The mother looked up at the stars and said, "This is a better day than the last. For my children have learned patience and fortitude in the face of difficulty. Yesterday I gave them courage. Today I've given them strength." And the days went on, and the months, and the years. And the mother grew old, and she was small and bent. But her children were strong, and they walked with courage. And her children had children of their own, who learned the same lessons. And when the way was hard, they helped the mother. And when the way was rough, they lifted her and carried her. And at last they came to a hill. And beyond that hill, they could see a shining road and golden gates flung wide open. And the mother said, "I've reached the end of my journey. And now I know that the end is better than the beginning, for my children and grandchildren can walk alone." And the children and grandchildren said, "You will always walk with us, Mother, even when you have gone through those gates." And they stood and watched as she went on alone. The gates closed after her, and they said, "We cannot see her, but she is with us. A mother and grandmother like ours is more than a memory. She's a living presence in all of us." Welcome, friends and family. We're here to celebrate the life and comfort the family of Laurene Sierles, daughter of Isidore, who went by David, and Irene Cohn, sister to Darcy Mason, mother to Hannah and Josh, mother-in-law to me and Nickte, and grandmother to Rebecca, Leah, and Kai. A funeral is often a time of sadness and reflection, and we're sad. We're sad not because Laurene, or Lolly to us, died, but because she lived. And because she lived, she touched all our lives. And when we cry, we're not really crying for her. We're crying for ourselves because we will miss her. And also because of her, we're here, friends and family, sharing in our love for her, and we know she touched all our lives, either directly or indirectly. And now a poem, When All That's Left Is Love, by Rabbi Alan Mahler. When I die, if you need to weep, cry for someone walking the street beside you. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands and souls touch souls. You can love me most by sharing your simchas or goodness, multiplying your mitzvot in acts of kindness, letting me live in your eyes and not on your mind. And when you say Kaddish for me, remember what our Torah teaches. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. In the Jewish faith, it's traditional that we recite Psalm 23, which I just learned was Laurene's mother's favorite psalm. We say, Adonai, Roi lo exar, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Traditionally, we say this in times of both sorrow and joy, words that uplift and remind us to trust in God. But I think there's more to it than that. In reality, while the words appear to invoke God, I believe the psalm is really more of an invocation for us to reach inside of ourselves and find that internal strength to prevail in times of adversity. It's a reminder that we all have strength inside of ourselves to carry on and find the goodness and joy as we live our lives without Laurene. And so with that, I'm going to ask that everyone here join me and my family as we recite it together in English. It's on the little folders that everybody received. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me. In the presence of mine enemies, thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness, mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And now, I'm going to ask Leah if she wants to come up and read a poem.
What though the radiance, which was once so bright, be now forever taken from my sight? Though nothing can bring back the hour of splendor in the grass, of glory in the flower, we will grieve not, rather find strength in what remains behind, in the primal sympathy which having been must ever be, in the soothing thoughts that spring out of human suffering, in the faith that looks through death, in the years that bring the philosophic mind.
That poem was selected by Laurene, actually, and she asked Leah to read it. Grandmother and granddaughter, actually with all her granddaughter, both her granddaughters, she had a special bond. Next, Darcy, if you'd like to come up and talk about your sister and some of her early years.
Hi, I am Darcy. For those that don't know me, I'm Laurene's sister, younger sister. Hannah and Gary asked me to share some of our childhood memories. So we lived in the southwest side of Chicago, and since our bubby lived with us in our 3-bedroom home, Laurene and I shared a bedroom. Our mom did not ask our opinion when it came to decorating, so we had a blue room. We had blue walls, blue painted dressers, and even blue blankets. We hated the color blue pretty early in our lives. I'm wearing this dress in honor of the time we spent in our blue room. This background color is about what everything was, all the same in that room. Sharing a room had some good times and some not so good days. We fluctuated between being best friends and running to tattle on each other. But being 4 years younger, the one thing I knew was Laurene was always there to keep an eye on me. When I first started school, she always walked me there and back and tried not to be too annoyed by her baby sister who was always tagging behind. As we got a little older, our parents' friend, Uncle Slim, worked at a theater downtown Chicago, and he would give us tickets to show plays, musicals mostly. We had first row seats for The Fiddler on the Roof, and Laurene and I spent the whole play trying to look up the girls' skirts, and you can't. Part of our chores was helping with dinner dishes. Mom would wash, and we would take turns clearing the table or drying. Those nights were the best because our dad and Bubby would be in the living room with the door closed, and we would sing the show tunes at the top of our lungs. We were definitely not the best singers, but it was fun, and it made the work go much faster. Laurene graduated from high school the year I graduated from grade school, so I had her reputation to live with. I don't think she ever got in trouble, and she always had great grades. She was a difficult act to follow, but I got used to being told I just needed to apply myself a little more to be like my sister. Laurene was the first in our family to continue education after high school and decided on being a registered nurse. Our parents thought it was too messy, and being a teacher was much more sensible. Laurene didn't give in, and she went for her RN, and she spent her entire working career helping others as a nurse. Because she paved the way, when I said I wanted to go to dental hygiene school and work with my hands in patients' mouths, our parents supported my decision. I have one last secret to share about Laurene. For those who knew her as an adult, you know she was a diehard Cub fan. There's a picture of her up there with her Cub hat on. The truth is, as a child, she disliked sports, but claimed to be a White Sox fan to irritate our Cub fan dad. She would deny that now. As Laurene got older, she learned the errors of her ways and became our dad's best Cub partner. They made going to Wrigley Field together a few times a year the high point of their summer. Laurene and I grew up in a time of no air conditioning, few summer vacations, no social media or video games, but enjoyed our days mostly due to Laurene's gift of creativity. Because of her, our lazy summer days were full of adventure.
There was something she told me, Darcy, the very first time I met you, that I should tell you, and I would feel remiss if I didn't tell you again. She has always been prettier, smarter, and younger than you.
Today I'll accept that.
As you heard from Darcy, Laurene grew up in Chicago, good student, although she did have a very peculiar name. First, her middle name was Harriet. We're not going to talk about that a lot. She hated that name. And although she loved her first name, people seemed to have trouble with it. In fact, many people, including her teachers, when seeing it written, would get it wrong or assume it was a typo. In fact, Darcy, you recounted how she had one teacher who spent a whole year trying to teach her how to spell her name right. Probably didn't help later on when she also took the last name of Sierles. As Darcy mentioned, Laurene was very close to her dad. They shared a mutual love of sports, especially the Cubs. And I remember even going to Cubs games with both them and Hannah all those years ago. She was also a Bears fan, and maybe taking a little bit after her grandmother, Leah kept insisting to Laurene that she was a Green Bay fan, just to spite her lolly. They would bet on games, and the loser would have to wear the opposite team's logo the next day. The Bears, being the Bears, Laurene ended up wearing Packers stuff frequently. I knew Lolly as a mother-in-law, and I can tell you that my early impressions of her was not only that she was friendly, but, oh boy, could she cook, and loved doing so. Hannah and Josh can tell you that she made hot breakfast in the morning, sometimes as early as 5:30 if needed. I'm assuming that's before Hannah went to the ice rink, which she took you to every day. Dinner was always planned out in advance. In the morning, the meat was defrosting, so it would be ready, and sometimes really super complicated meals, béarnaise sauce and all. I know she loved Thanksgiving food, sometimes cooking us a second Thanksgiving after going to Darcy's house the day before. And she shared her love of cooking with her grandchildren, especially in Rebecca and Leah, teaching them how to bake sugar cookies and other things savory and sweet. And of course, always sharing a little bit of raw dough, a love of which Hannah even shares to this day. Don't understand it. Laurene loved to vacation with her family in Wisconsin. They'd rent a cabin for the week, and eventually she moved to Eagle River, where she enjoyed spending time out on the lake with her pontoon boat and the raft she had. Hannah and Josh remember going up to Hayward with her and having fond memories of the family going to what apparently was a surprisingly impressive and memorable lumberjack competition. I think we even have pictures of Hannah trying to be a lumberjack somewhere. She was also super creative. She went through different phases at different points of time, sculpting, designing, creating scenery for Hannah's ice skating shows, knitting purses, and more. She lovingly created hand-sewn Halloween costumes. This week, I got to see pictures of Hannah and Josh as matching bunny rabbits. And this continued before her hands got too bad with arthritis, with making costumes for her young grandchildren, pumpkins, fairy princesses, and more. She loved to tell her girls the story of how she was a dancer when she was little, and how proud she was when she got her red point shoes. Sadly for Laurene, she got meningitis as a child, and that ended her dancing career. But Rebecca remembers how excited Lolly was when Rebecca got her pair of point shoes, which she told us, I think, like 40, 50 times. Laurene loved to play games. I remember her as the only one in our family willing to play Trivial Pursuit with me. Hannah remembers growing up playing canasta, rummy cube, Scrabble, and she was the master of Scrabble, as well as Yahtzee. But not just regular Yahtzee, oh no. Not just triple Yahtzee, but fast-paced double-triple Yahtzee. And I can attest to how fast-paced it was, because when I tried to play Yahtzee with Hannah and Laurene, even basic regular Yahtzee, I wasn't allowed to play because I was too slow. This love of games continued with her grandchildren. They would keep a running tally over the year of each game played and who won. And those lists were very long. They played a lot of games, and Leah kept that list on a clipboard. And when they ran out of games, she made up card games to play with them. She loved playing mahjong with her friends in Del Webb. Years ago, she even taught a mahjong class. She loved mahjong so much that when clearing out her house for the move to Brookdale, she insisted that we keep her old mahjong cards. Hannah and I will always remember Laurene as super helpful. After Rebecca was born, she flew from Arizona to spend 2 weeks helping out. As new parents, I don't know how we would have stayed sane without her help. I don't even know if we would have figured out how to give Rebecca a bath without her help. And she was right there when Leah was born, helping out again. And as the girls got older, she continued to help out, driving the girls to dance regularly, helping stay home with sick girls, babysitting, and more. And when Hannah needed to change her work schedule mid-year and add a day, she would drive up an hour every week from Crest Hill, where she was living, and slept over the night just so she could help out with Leah the next day. She also jumped on a plane to Spain to see newly born Kai and help out Josh and Nick Day for a time as well. Unfortunately, soon after, her health kept her from being able to fly across the Atlantic. And I know that it pained her so much to be away from Josh, Nick Day, and Kai. But mostly, I think me and my family remember Laurene as Lolly, the grandmother. She loved her grandchildren the muchest there is. And she didn't want her grandchildren to be embarrassed to hug and kiss her in front of their friends. So she invented a sign, an L. So stands for Lolly and stands for I love you. And you could touch the L's to say I love you to each other. Her grandchildren's interests were always her top interest as well. When our girls were watching Dance Moms, she became an expert on Dance Moms, watching every week to be able to discuss it with them and insert her opinions. In fact, one of the made-up card games she had with Leah, it was similar to the game of Garbage, but based around the people in Dance Moms. The rules were super complex, and I never really understood them. They played it all the time, and it would always end with lots of laughter. And somehow she knew more about High School Musical than I think the producers did, and can keep up a conversation with Rebecca about it a whole lot longer than I could. The girls would do dance shows for her in our living rooms. Sometimes they would play Show Me Your Best Move, where the girls would either do good or bad moves, but she would always give a funny reaction every time, and all I heard was just a bunch of giggling. She traveled to every dance competition, recital, nutcracker, school performance, and anything else that she could. And if she couldn't get there, if there was a live stream, she was watching. More recently, she would watch Badger football games and basketball games, not because she was interested in the game, but just in case she could catch a glimpse of Rebecca. She booked a trip to Spain as soon as she could after Kai was born. And although she couldn't see him as much as she wanted, she made sure that we knew all the news about Kai, Josh, and Nick Day. I know these past few years with the pandemic were incredibly hard on Laurene. Because of her health problems, we were really cautious about seeing her. And I know not seeing her family nor playing Maj with her friends was very hard on her. Eventually we started eating with her and spending time with her, but I know that isolation took its toll. And certainly this past year where we could, we made sure to spend as much time as her as we can, up into her death. For those of you who don't know what ballet performance awards are, they're essentially a super long, super repetitive ballet recital where the dancers are awarded medals at the end. And when I say repetitive, I really do mean repetitive. In reality, the parents should be giving medals for sitting through them, and Laurene sat through them for many years. Last week, as the confusion set in, one of the things that made us laugh was Laurene asking us, "Can I have a performance award?" I don't know about ballet, but when it comes to being a grandma, Lolly, you definitely earned gold with distinction. We love you, and we will miss you. Have fun watching Cubs games with your father, and give those angels hell while playing Mahjong with them. There are at least two prayers that are traditionally said at the funeral service and at gravesite. I'm going to talk about them here so I don't have to talk about them at the gravesite while people are melting. The first is El Malay Rahim. El Malay Rahim is a plea that the soul of the departed be granted proper rest in paradise. It's a reminder that through our prayers and good deeds, we hope to earn compassion for the departed souls of those who are dear to us. I think there are three reasons why we say the prayer beyond the literal asking for peace for the soul of our loved one. First, in asking for peace for Laurene, we're also asking for peace for ourselves. It's a reminder that we can go on knowing that Laurene, while she was in pain over the last several years, is now at peace. And we can be at peace knowing her suffering is ended. Second, it's a Jewish tradition at the time of death that those living absolve the dead of any sins or transgressions against us. And likewise, the belief is that the dead also forgive the living, so that we can live in comfort knowing that any hurts have been forgiven. El Malay Rahim is a reminder of that forgiveness, and that both our loved one's soul and our souls are at peace with one another. And third, it reminds us that we can honor Laurene's memory by being charitable in her name, through either literal charity or by being noble and kind to others, always ready with a charitable smile or a helping hand. I think Laurene would have taken comfort in knowing that she is reflected in the kindness that we all show others. I'm not going to sing it. I'll spare you that. El Malay Rahim, Shochein Baramim, Hamatzei Menucha Nechoa Techas, Kanfei Hashiana, Bamalos Kedoshim Ut Harim, Kizohar Hakarim Mazharim, Es Nishma, Hindalea Bat Isaac Va'ida, Shalechala, Loma Bavor Shinavu Tzedaka, But Hazkaras Nimsha Beganin Eden Tehe Menuchasa, Lachen Bal Harachim Yeshira Beser Knofaf Leolim Bitsur Hayayim Et Nishmasa Adonai Hu Nichalasa Basanuch Bashalom Al Mishkava Benamar Amen. God of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest beneath the shelter of thine presence among the holy and pure, who shine as brightness of the firmament to the soul of Laurene Harriet, daughter of Isidore and Irene, who is gone to eternal home. May thou, O God of mercy, shelter her forever under the wings of thy presence. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal. And grant that the memories of her life inspire us always to noble and charitable living. Amen. The second prayer we say is the mourner's Kaddish. It's a funny thing about the mourner's Kaddish. it really doesn't mention death at all. It's not a sad prayer. It's a celebration of life and a wish of peace. In fact, some version of the Kaddish is said multiple times during daily services. It's one of the most used prayers in all of Judaism. So why do we use it for mourning? I think we use it for mourning precisely because it's not special. And it serves as a reminder that we should celebrate life in good occasions, bad occasions, and even under our normal everyday toil, we can live and honor Laurene. And we may be hurting now, and we may feel this emptiness in our hearts that she used to fill. I wish I could say it'll go away, but it doesn't. But you do get used to living with it. And the Mourner's Kaddish is a reminder that we can have joy, and we can be happy, and we can be sad, and we can celebrate and we can cry. But most importantly, we can go about our lives all while honoring Laurene. So please rise if you're able and join us as a family as we say the Mourner's Kaddish, which is also on the back of your booklet here. Yitgadal B'Yitgadash Shemei Rabbah B'Alma Divruchei V'Almich Malchuteh Vayechim. Oh, I'm going to go this version, sorry. Yitgadal B'Yitgadash Shemei Rabbah. I'm going to start over again. V'Alma Divrach Yiruteh V'Almich Malchuteh V'Chayichon U'Yomichon U'V'Chayeh Dechal Beit Yisrael Ba'Gala U'Izman Kariv V'Meru Amen. Yehesh me'raba mevorach le'olam ulam me'mayamaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpoar v'yitraman v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal shemei dekudisha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush bechata v'ne'emata. Da'aman b'alma v'meru. Amen. Yehesh lama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru. Amen. May there be peace and life for all of us and for all of Israel, and let us say Amen. You can sit. This is going to conclude the memorial service. It's hot outside, so please don't feel obligated to accompany us to the cemetery. Feel free to join us back here at 5 p.m. for Shiva and dinner. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Doug. Thank you, Doug. And I did bring everything in a blue folder.
So as Gary said, this does conclude the service here at the cemetery. The interment will take place immediately at the family's plots at West Lawn Cemetery, 7801 West Montrose in Norwich. Following the interment, as Gary said, the family will be hosting a Shiva here in this building from 5 p.m. until 8 p.m. Those of you that go with the family, if we're earlier than that, you're still invited to come back immediately. The procession will be forming in our parking lot. If you're going in procession with the family, please make sure you have an orange funeral safety sticker that should be placed in the front passenger side of your windshield. Would also ask that you please have your bright headlights and flashing hazard lights on at all times. For an additional measure of safety, our staff will be placing magnetic flags on the tops of the vehicles throughout the procession. This procession will be traveling on the highway. We have the hearse in the front. I'll be in the rear car. We'll keep everyone together. But we're going to travel at a speed that invites people to leave the procession. So allow people to merge in and merge out. Unfortunately, people don't respect funeral processions like they used to just a few years ago, but we'll go slowly and safely on the highway. The following individuals have been selected to act as pallbearers. As I call your names, if you'd please come forward. Rachel Trachtman, Jillian Madsen, Rebecca Alterson, Leah Alterson, Michael Berger, Bob Mason, Ricky Trachtman, Heather Rosenquist, and Steve Rosenquist. At this time, I would ask everyone to please rise as the deceased family are escorted from the chapel. Yes. Ask everyone to please into your cars, the family.